As Vladislav gazed at the gently swaying float in the breeze, his thoughts were consumed by the impending conversation he needed to have with his wife. He had reached a heart-wrenching decision to leave their family, even though he and Olga had a young child together. A heavy sigh escaped Vladislav's lips, and it was as if his thoughts slipped out in words. "Why must we part ways like this?" he pondered aloud. His greatest fear wasn't about the end of their shared life, but rather how Olga would react. He dreaded lengthy arguments and the exchange of bitter accusations. Women's tears, in particular, irritated him, and that might explain why Olga had learned not to cry in front of him as much as possible. Throughout their time together, Vladislav had never truly empathized with her. He'd only pretended to offer his sympathy. In reality, he watched her suffering with a heart of stone in his chest. This emotional distance only fueled the tension in their relationship, with Olga seemingly doing her best to keep the growing abyss at bay. Olga couldn't help but recognize the direction their relationship was heading. Perhaps she was merely trying to mitigate the negativity and smooth over the sharp edges. However, fate couldn't be fooled. No matter how hard they tried, their fractured relationship was inevitably reaching its end, and it might not conclude amicably or by mutual decision. After a brief pause, Vladislav glanced at his watch and announced firmly, "It's time to gather our things. There's no point in waiting any longer." He spoke in this manner because he had a low tolerance for prolonged, uncomfortable situations. His philosophy in life was clear: if you wanted something, you had to go after it, and how you achieved it was your own business. After loading his equipment into the car and changing out of his fishing gear into clean clothes, he released 2 small carp from their cage back into the lake. Fishing hadn't been fruitful that day, and he hoped that the conversation with his wife would yield better results. Throughout the drive home, Vladislav's mind churned with thoughts about how to broach the subject and what arguments to present. Olga was waiting for him at the entrance, pushing their child in a stroller. Seeing his wife and their little one, Vladislav put on a facade of a devoted family man. "Why did you come out so late?" he inquired. "Seema needs some fresh air," Olga replied, "and I'm tired of being cooped up all the time." "Nobody is keeping you, but you could have gone for a walk during the day," Vladislav muttered with discontent. "Now enough? How many times can you tell me?" Olga retorted indignantly and walked towards the playground. "Soon, no one will tell you anything," he muttered under his breath as she walked away, but she didn't even bother to turn around. Vladislav's carefully crafted plan was unraveling, and he had failed to provoke Olga as he intended. She didn't fall for his bait and even had a response. All that was left was to await her return from the walk and confront her at home. After setting the car alarm, Vladislav entered the building and made his way up to the apartment. Inside, it felt strangely empty and desolate, as if no one inhabited it at all. Without much thought, he tossed his jacket on the coat rack and casually kicked off his shoes. They should have gone in the shoe cabinet, but Vladislav didn't bother with such details. Contrary to his usual routine, he remained in his outdoor attire and plopped down on the sofa, something Olga strongly disliked. She always took great care to maintain a perfectly clean house, with every piece of furniture covered by hand-embroidered covers. Vladislav was well aware of this, yet he allowed himself to be neglectful and disrespectful. It seemed like he had already made up his mind, but he was struggling with how to execute his plan without resorting to arguments. Simply saying, "I'm tired of living with you," was beyond him due to his pride. He wanted Olga to believe she was at fault and that she was losing her beloved husband, who was about to vanish into thin air. Finally, the front door creaked open, and Olga's voice cut through the silence. "Why did you run away? You should have helped me carry the stroller." "I was busy," Vladislav brazenly lied. "And what? Lounging on the couch? And in your street clothes too?" "I can sit where I want and wear what I want," Vladislav replied, unabashed. "Vlad, What's going on with you? I don't even recognize you, Olga said as she carried the stroller into the hallway with the baby in her arms. I was exhausted today. I spent the whole day on my feet doing laundry,
Don't start
and cleaning.
I know you're always busy with housework.
Vladislav waved his hand dismissively. What do you mean? Olga retorted. Do you think I'm just wasting my time? I take care of the entire house, including you. You're like my second child, and I have to clean up after you too. Don't clean, no one is forcing you, Vladislav said with a sense of pride, lifting his head. With pleasure, especially since you're a constant source of frayed nerves, Olga replied. Well, if that's the case, then this news won't come as a surprise, Vladislav said as he rose from the couch and approached her closely. And what news is that? Olga inquired, her expression becoming more serious. We're breaking up for good, Vladislav blurted out, exhaling heavily. I've said it. What do you mean by breaking up? Is this some kind of joke? Olga's eyes welled up with tears. No, it's serious. I'm in love with another woman, Vladislav admitted. This revelation shed light on why he had been preparing for this conversation for so long. Vladislav had decided to leave for his mistress, and it seemed they had planned everything in advance. But what he said next shocked his wife even more. I'm leaving for the love of my life, he continued. She was and remains the only woman I truly loved. What about me? Was our love just a game to you? Olga slapped him hard. All these years, you deceived me, calling me your favorite. You're a despicable man. You swore that we'd be together through thick and thin. Leave those old cliches behind, Vladislav shouted, scaring their child. Our love was a mistake. That's it. Calm down, Olga said. Look what you've done. Even your son is afraid of you. That's because he takes after you. He has nothing of mine except for physical traits. He's inherited your character, quick to tears. Your whole family is too sentimental, without a strong backbone. After these words, Vladislav began to pack his essentials into a sports bag. I'll take only what's necessary. The rest can be sorted out after the divorce. Please, take whatever you want. I don't want anything of yours. Olga raised her voice, but interestingly, the child didn't cry. It seemed Vladislav was truly creating discomfort in this family. The question lingered. Why did he get married in the first place? He could have lived alone, free from reproach and meddling. Yet he chose to marry, only to destroy it himself. The divorce will be official, so don't worry, Vladislav assured. Seems to me that stamp in the passport won't change a thing. Honestly, there won't be much of a difference, Olga said, shrugging her shoulders as she changed her son into more comfortable clothing. Don't say that. I fulfilled my duties honestly, Vladislav replied. Yeah, just like a contract at work. You bring in your paycheck, peck on the cheek, and put your feet up. After that, the wife can do whatever she wants because you've fulfilled your part, Vladislav remarked. Stop it. I've had enough of listening to this, Vladislav shouted again, but then immediately looked at his son, offering a sweet smile to reassure the child. You can see him, I won't stop you. Olga nodded towards their child, whose wide eyes watched the adults as they exchanged heated words. Even though he didn't yet understand the cause of their argument, it was likely that some impression was forming in the depths of his young mind. As he grew up, he might have plenty of questions for both his mother and father. Is she a good woman? Olga asked ironically. Have you thought it through? Her voice finally broke the silence. Maybe as a farewell. No, you've crossed that bridge. Now we're strangers. What do you mean? Vladislav didn't grasp the question. Your first love, the one you were planning to leave me for, Olga clarified. Yes, she's good. In any case, better than you. Vladislav nodded, striking a painful blow to his wife's ego. He knew that this comparison would deeply hurt her, and naturally, Olga reacted. She burst into tears, picked up their son, and retreated into the bedroom. Left alone in the living room, Vladislav continued to pack. It seemed he was indifferent to what his wife was going through at that moment. All his contemplations about fishing and how their separation would unfold had been in vain. The entire process had begun and concluded in a mere half hour, leaving behind a heavy emotional residue. Peering into the bedroom one last time after packing his bag, Vladislav saw his wife curled up on the bed. Their son lay beside her, playing with a rattle. Olga stared at the wall, almost unblinking. Leaving the keys on the nightstand in the hallway, Vladislav slammed the door and made his way downstairs and out. Meanwhile, Olga remained on the bed for about half an hour before she finally got up, cradling the baby in her arms and headed to the kitchen. She needed to prepare baby formula as her milk had dried up long ago, and she also needed to make dinner. Vladislav, on the other hand, arrived at the home of his supposed mistress. She turned out to be a former model who had once graced the runway, which had initially caught his attention. He had stumbled upon a fashion boutique where a showcase of new Italian dresses was being held. Alyona's grace completely captivated Vladislav. He couldn't take his eyes off her. Somehow, he managed to meet her and even get close. They began dating, and before long, love blossomed between them. About a year passed, and Alina became a star. She moved to the capital, and their relationship came to a halt. Vladislav found himself on his own for a while, and eventually married Olga. They had a child, and then he received word that Alina had returned. However, she was no longer the dazzling star she had once been. Her dreams of making it in the capital hadn't come to fruition, and she couldn't secure sponsors. So she had to return to her hometown. Their paths crossed almost accidentally in a shopping center. Vladislav was overwhelmed with love upon seeing her and asked if they could meet again. Alina objected, saying, "You are married and have a child," to which she received an unexpected response, "They don't stand in the way, I love only you." In the end, they rekindled their relationship, and their previous attraction returned. However, fate is not blind and discerns who is genuinely committed and who is just a passing fancy. It didn't take long for Vladislav to enjoy his newfound connection. Little did he know that he would soon be left high and dry. Meanwhile, Olga gradually adjusted to the fact that her husband was no longer around, particularly considering the hurtful things he had said during their parting. Vladislav sought the support of friends who helped expedite the divorce process. 2 months later, they officially ended their marriage. When Vladislav met Olga at her place, he delivered an impassioned speech. "You are now free as a bird in flight. You can remarry and have more children." "No, ex-husband," Olga shook her head. "I'd rather dedicate my life to ensuring that my son doesn't grow up to be a womanizer and egoist like his father." As Olga uttered these words, she seemed to foresee the future. Exactly 6 months later, Vladislav's selfishness became a stumbling block in his relationship with his mistress. Alyona had tolerated his behavior for a while, but even she grew tired of it. Although she loved Vlad deeply, she decided to give him a taste of his own medicine. Alyona had a penchant for extreme sports, particularly hang gliding, which allowed her to experience the world from a bird's eye view. She loved the exhilaration of soaring beneath the clouds. Vladislav didn't share her passion and did his best to dissuade her. "Why do you need these flights? Are you trying to be a bird or something?" "I love it. Would you like to try it together?" Elena suggested, but Vladislav declined. In response, out of sheer spite, she chose a younger and more daring partner. She aimed to provoke Vlad even more, and the situation ended in tragedy. During their flight, the harnesses broke, and they plummeted from a great height, crashing into the trees. Her partner died instantly, as his back struck a healthy tree limb, while Lena's spine was seriously damaged. Doctors at the hospital informed her that she had a compression fracture and might never walk again. Vladislav visited her room and somberly stated, "They can't do anything. You're likely to be disabled." "But you won't leave me, will you?" Elena asked tearfully. "I need some time alone to think," Vladislav muttered and headed for the exit. "What do you mean? Where are you going?" Alina shouted after him, but it was as if he didn't hear her. Vladislav abandoned Alyona just as he had abandoned his ex-wife. However, for some reason, he felt that she might forgive him. He later attempted to return to her as if nothing had happened. Olga was incensed by his audacity. "Are you out of your mind? Did you think I would welcome you with open arms? What about our family, our child?" Vladislav responded, a hurt expression on his face. "No more family, and my son will grow up without you. Just go away. I don't want to see you." Olga pushed Vladislav out the door, and he turned away, shaking his head ruefully. He was now in a quandary. What to do next? His mistress was now permanently disabled, and his wife wouldn't take him back. In this situation, he believed it was best to leave the city and start anew in a different place. He couldn't have predicted how his ex-wife and mistress would react to each other. Olga found Alina in the hospital and began visiting her regularly. Eventually, they became friends, united by the shared pain of being betrayed by a loved one. Vladislav, on the other hand, was left high and dry, having lost the trust and respect of those close to him. But his ex-wife and ex-mistress, surprisingly, found common ground. They made a pact to support each other, leaving behind all the bitterness and grievances, no matter what had happened in the past.